Hey guys, it's Belle, and in this video we are going to be reading through two short little poems, I believe number 98 and number 99, from Eugenius of Toledo's Little Book of Songs. And these are an extremely cute kind of text in the Middle Ages, which I don't actually know if there's a precise term for this kind of text, but they're almost fill in the blank kind of text, like stock forms, like we have in present day society. I think we tend to associate the whole insert name here kind of document with modern day bureaucracy and sort of industrialized society, but they had these kinds of texts in the early Middle Ages as well. Cassiodorus's Variae, which are his collection of state papers from King Theodoric, it has so many letters which are just the text that is read out on certain occasions, or they're the text of a document that's given to somebody when the document says insert name here, you have been promoted to so and so rank within the government of King Theodoric. It's quite cute, those little kinds of texts, and sometimes you even get them, amusingly enough, for things like gravestones. We get little poems written into manuscripts, and occasionally with those gravestone poems where it says, this is a sort of generic person's epitaph saying how much of a great person they were. Occasionally we actually find real life carved in stone tombstones which bear those same poems that you see in the manuscript. So that's really fun and cute. I don't know if a epitaph has been found bearing this one. I don't think so, because this poem written by Eugenius of Toledo, I don't think was designed to be written on stone. I think that what we have here is a sort of Visigothic greeting card almost. It's a poem that you can write on small little pieces of parchment or something, maybe just on the back of another letter that you're sending, and send it to somebody and have it work for pretty much any situation. This comes right after the poem that he wrote to Eusechius, and that's a poem with a title, Ad Eusechium. So this title is Ad Quendam Amicum, which means to a certain friend, to any friend that you may happen to have. And as we'll see when we go through and read it, it's just a generic greeting. So, what I like to imagine, I don't know for sure that this is the case, is I like to imagine that in the Visigothic period they were sending greeting cards to each other, and there were standard stock phrases that you would get on these little greeting cards, and maybe they decorate them a tiny bit. Because we do know, for instance, that Eugenius of Toledo had, just for his own sense of psychological comfort, a little poem that he wrote praying to God to protect him from the demons and let him sleep well. I'm absolutely covering that on my channel because it's adorable and so cute. And I think this is another example of the kinds of poetry that he recorded, which aren't super practical. They're just a bit of fun, and they're just a nice little gesture for someone. So we have two of them here, a slightly longer one and a slightly shorter one. I've got the Latin here glossed in the original, and I've translated them into Gothic as well. I'll read both of them and then we'll have a look at what they actually say. And as usual, if you want to have a go at translating these, feel free to pause the video and do so. Unfortunately, there's no Latin in the side. We only have the Gothic in there, but hopefully you'll be able to get through the Latin with a Wiktionary. And as usual, forgive me if my poetic diction is not the greatest. So, onwards. Se pertuam placide cupido quia nos salutem, in circo nostrum percipelletus ave, ac ne longi fluo grandescat episcola tractu, quod possum breviter, dulcis amice, vale. Multas salus nobis, si sunt tibi donna salutis, a tu sospes ave, tu sine fine vale. And then the Gothic is Unteuftaganist azeit vilio cunanthina, inthes unsara andnim vagins golin, athan ni lange an accorde epistole redine, thati mal huilo hunquithan, votis freond theuthis sies. Managa ganist sunsis, javes intus givos ganistes, fuo hels, inu andi sies. Alright, so what does all of this mean? Sebe tuam placide, cubdo quia nasi salutem. So this is a kind of weird sentence. So quia is the first word. We should translate it as like since. So since often, cubio, I desire to know, your health, tuam placidam. And then tuam salutem, and then placide is a vocative, so it's addressed to the person. Now, this Latin only has a distinct vocative from the accusative in masculine adjectives. So this indicates to us that it's intended for a masculine recipient, which isn't too surprising given that the vast majority of literate people in the Visigothic period would have been men, and of course Eugenius of Toledo, being a bishop and a monk, he probably would have been writing to other male monastics. And perhaps he would have amended this so that it could be applied to a female recipient as well. We do sometimes see, such as in the Book of Nonnaminster, we see prayers that are written in the manuscript where somebody has come along and taken the Latin masculine endings and written slash and then put the female endings above. So in the same way as we might say he slash she in the present day, or to him or to her on a greeting card, sometimes in these prayers that they're recording in these manuscripts, some people would go along and they'd write slash female form for the Latin grammatical endings afterwards, showing that there was some awareness that these prayers could sometimes be intended for a female audience as well. And so it's possible that in some of the manuscripts of Eugenius of Toledo's poetry, we might actually have a version which does that for this greeting card, implying that they might have been intending it for a female audience. Unfortunately, not all of the manuscripts of Eugenius of Toledo's poetry have been digitized, and there's only one that I can access online at the Library of Madrid, and it's pretty blurry, the edition that they have uploaded presently, so it's not the greatest to work from. In the future, maybe that'll be amended and we'll be able to do more proper paleographical research into the transmission of Eugenius of Toledo's poetry. But I elaborate. So the first line means, because I often wish to know of your good health, O pleasant one, O my pleasant friend. In circum nostrum percipeletus ave. So this one it's a curious one, and it's sort of confusing. So we'll just tackle the ave last of all, because that's a bit confusing. So percipe is a command. It means you perceive letus being happy, and then nostrum is our, and then because nostrum is of course an adjective, we're going to have a noun that comes afterwards, and then the noun is this ave. Now, obviously ave is literally a verb; it's the imperative form of the verb, but here, just based on the context and the implication, it's clearly being treated as a noun in its own right, and that's why the nostrum sort of governs it. And one way you could maybe think of this is ave is being treated here not as the actual word ave, but as a word, capital W, which happens to be ave. And that's why it would go in nostrum, because nostrum would be the accusative neuter singular form of the adjective noster, and verbum, if we were to substitute ave here with verbum for just a word, then verbum would be accusative singular whatever neuter form. So that's sort of how it's working. Ave here is technically a verb, but it's being used as a noun, and therefore I've glossed it with the red. So the second line means, therefore, may you, being happy, perceive our greeting, our ave. Ac ne longifluo grandescat episcola tractu. But lest this letter grow heavy with long flowing treatment, with excessive writing. And so there's a really interesting article written by Hugh Magennis, maybe, I can't remember, on the simple style in medieval Christian literature. It goes back all the way to saints like Augustine of Hippo and St. Jerome, who basically advocated for a simple, concise style of writing which was more appropriate for Christian apologetics and Christian preaching. And this sort of set the standard for most medieval Latin literature until you get to the sort of hermeneutic period in early medieval England, and then you get into the scholastic period, which is pretty simple in its own right. And so medieval authors often excused themselves for either writing too much, or they justified not writing certain things by saying that we've omitted these things so that the writing doesn't get too long. Alfred Trevisan does the same thing in the preface to his Lives of Saints. He admits that he's cut out certain information from his Latin original, and we know that which Latin original he had, because there's a manuscript known as the Cotton Corpus Legendary, which matches almost verbatim with Alfred Trevisan's word for saints, and seems to be the Latin original that he was copying from, or something very, very similar to it. And Alfred Trevisan likewise says, lest that this gets too long, I've cut it down, and that's why you don't have this information. Similar trope here Eugenius of Toledo is using to say, I'm cutting it short so that this greeting card doesn't get too long, which I also quite like, right? Because I think that anybody who he's going to be sending this to, it's probably a friend who he feels some kind of obligation to keep in contact with. But if he cared that much, he would have written something original, right? Like, he would have made something that's specific to them. But the fact that he's sending them this like stock letter that he just sent, this is his greeting card poem that he sends to all of his friends. I don't know, maybe they send them around Christmas time, and he's like, oh, I've got to send this card to Sundrimer or whoever else, some Visigothic name, Athelwulf. And so he just writes this out, and he's like, my dear friend, I love you so much. I don't want this letter to get too long and too tedious for you, so because of that, I'm going to cut it short. It's definitely not because I can't be bothered to write more. Love you, genius, so much. Okay. So, but lest this letter get too heavy with excessive discussion of that which quod possum breviter. And now this is one where you got an implied verb. So you've got an implied dicere, an implied verb meaning to say in here, which Eugenius has cut out for metrical purposes. So lest this letter grow heavy through excessive discussion, that which I might say briefly. And so he's saying, just so it doesn't get too long, I'm going to cut to the chase. Dulcis amice, oh my sweet friend, vale, goodbye. And now this is actually a verb, because he's saying this. He's not mentioning it as something that he might say, as he is with the ave up here. But it is positioned so that it parallels the ave at the end of the second line. So that's the first little poem. And then he's got this here, which is a different one, an even smaller version. We've got 4 lines in the first poem, and then you have a second poem that you can send to a certain friend, which is only 2 lines if you really can't give a fuck. Okay, it probably isn't that. It's probably, I don't know, maybe you just had a smaller piece of parchment and you couldn't fit it all onto the little strip of parchment that you had to send. It's possible. Who knows? But anyway, this is the smaller greeting card for the friends you like even less, I'm going to say. There will be great health for us, multa salus nobis. And here this is, again, you've got an implied verb to be here. Si sunt divi dona salutis. If the gifts of health are for you, or this is a Latin construction for if you have the gifts of health. And bear in mind here, of course, that salus and salutis here can refer to both physical and mental health, because in the medieval period they were kind of interchanged. And if you watch my video on the Visigothic proverbs, one of the proverbs that Eugenius of Toledo himself records is "Torquis ervet animo siquis sis corpe tortus," which means he will be twisted in his mind who is twisted in his body. So they definitely thought of mental and physical health as linked to a very large extent in the Visigothic period. And so that's a note on that regard. And so the mentioning the gifts of health might be linked to this idea of trying to comfort the person by means of sending them a letter to know that they're okay and to keep the friendship going, as of course was a subject that in the previous poem, the poem to Eusechius, which I've done a video on, entitled A Gay Long Distance Relationship in Visigothic Spain, Eugenius was just talking about that in the previous poem, about needing to keep in touch with old lovers, by letter correspondence, of being comforted by getting word from a loved one by a letter. So it's probably leading towards mental health in terms of the gifts of health that Eugenius is referencing here. And so it's worth noting also that what we have is sunt here and not sint, although depending on which manuscript variants you have, it's possible that the original might have been sint, but I'm taking sunt because that's all that I have from the source online, and if it is in fact sunt, then this is indicative and it follows the C, which means that it's implying that it's a very definite statement. So he's saying, I will have good health if you have the gifts of good health. This is echoing a common Roman way of ending letters, which was si vales valeo, which is, if you do well, I will also be doing well. So Eugenius is making his own little pun on this in this line here when he's saying, we will have great health if you have good health. At tu sospesabe. So, but, hello, healthy, safe friend. Tu sine fine vale. May you depart, or not depart, but may you do well without end. Although vale does mean goodbye, but it also means to prosper and do well. So he's not saying vale sine fine as in go away forever, like goodbye forever. He's saying may you prosper without end. Goodness. I mean, I wouldn't put it past Eugenius of today to say, may you go away forever, but he's catty enough that if he's going to be that catty, he'll be on the nose about it. He won't hide it. So, and then to quickly run through my Gothic translation here, for those modern Gothic learners who are still watching my channel, even after my ignominious split with the modern Gothic revival movement. Scandal. Unte uftaganists azates wilio kunan thina. So azates is the gloss of pleasant here. Since I wish to know wilio kunan ganist thina your health, ufta often. In this unsere andnim farins godin. So in this, on account of this, take up farins, O happy one, O rejoicing one, godin unsere, our greeting. Athan e ni lange anacorde epistole revine. So, however, lest it become burdened or it grow, epistole, the letter, lange rarine, with long discussion, with long treatment. Thati mag quilahun quithan. So notice I've added in the quithan here for that last line, quod possum breviter. So that which I may briefly say, what is beyond, O happy friend, Theothus sies, may you be happy, may you be blessed. And then the last two lines in the Gothic are Managaranists unsis, and I chose not to put in the wisant there. So there will be great health for us. Jave sind thus vivos ganistes. And likewise, I chose to translate sunt with the indicative into Gothic rather than the subjunctive. So if there are for you the gifts of salvation, thuoch hers, so, and also, you being healthy, inu andi, without end, cs, may you be. So may you be healthy without end. So that's my Gothic translation as well, because I like to translate some of these shorter Visigothic texts into the Gothic language and imagine what it might have been like if we had had greeting cards written in the Gothic language. I think that's quite cute. And that's it. That's the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little peep into what Visigothic greeting cards would have been like. If you want me to do more videos on these same kinds of texts, like fill in the blank kind of texts here, feel free to do so. I've actually done, in my video on the Merseburg charm, I argue that certainly in the Latin texts, there is an insert name here aspect on that same page in the manuscript. I argue that in the Merseburg Charms itself, the H with the dots on either side actually does represent an insert name here. So we have a sort of formulaic text in the Merseburg Charms, but Dr. Scott Shell apparently disagrees with my interpretation of that, which is fine. It's all grand. It's all part of the game. And but I can look into others' texts like that, and we can talk about those on my channel if you want. So if you want more videos on formulaic texts from the Middle Ages, let me know in the comments. If you want me to teach you Latin or Gothic or Old English, then you can subscribe to my Patreon, where I offer tuition at lower than market rates. And thank you to my 4 patrons I currently have. I really need to ask you guys if you actually want me to mention your name in these videos, because, you know, some people might not want to for privacy reasons, but thank you guys so much. I've actually started tutoring 2 of them, and it's been a lot of fun already. So if you want to learn some of these medieval languages I do on my channel, get in touch, sign up to my Patreon, and we can set that up. It's a good time. You can also join my Discord server, where I tend to post these little glosses as pictures before I turn them into videos. We're also looking to do watch parties. Probably by the time this video goes out, we'll be starting a weekly watch party for the German show Barbarians that's set in ancient Rome. So that's going to be quite fun. We're going to be watching season 2 as each episode comes out every week. So if you want to get in on the fun with that, come and join us in my Discord server. It's also just a fun community of like-minded people. We get together, we share memes, we have fun. So I hope to see you guys there. Until next time, like, comment, subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a nice day. Bye, everyone.